What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. I am Zane. Welcome to another episode of Everything Vive. Today, I am joined by Damon Whitney. How you doing, Damon?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Zane?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to have you on the show. Ronnie and I have been working with Damon. Actually, let me first start off. Damon was the sole man responsible for getting us in touch with the Smashbox Arena folks. And if you got one of the Steam keys from them, you please make sure you thank Damon, because it was all because of him we got connected with them. And that was probably one of the most popular episodes I think we've done. And
it was
Damon,
a great episode. Great episode. Yeah, it was. I loved it. It was a great episode.
They just make it so easy. They're so much fun, and I've been talking on and off with Jeff quite a bit. That leads into the first announcement before we get into this. But while Ronnie's still out of town, Damon's filling in, and we're good. Are you ready to chat, Damon?
I am very ready. I'm very ready and very excited.
Very cool. Okay, so first off, the first order of business, because I know we have a lot of news to get to. But the first thing is that we are sponsoring the first ever Smashbox Arena tournament. And you can get details. You can sign up. There is a qualification period that's going on right now, I believe, until February. I'm not sure when. I'll have to look it up and put up in the show notes. But it's going on right now. Yeah. You can sign up at least for another week. But the tournament will be on not this Sunday, but a week from this Sunday. So I don't have my dates on me. Let me look it up right now.
That sounds great, though.
February 12th.
How did this come about? This was you working with the developers?
Yeah. So I'm just really nerdy. I love like putting together brackets and stuff, and just like setting up tournaments. Like not just putting together the formats and like seeing the teams go through. So, I was talking with them about it, and I told them that I'd help kind of run the entire thing, and they quickly got to work implementing team functions so that you could choose your own team. So I don't know if you've jumped in the game recently, but at the time they didn't have that function. So now they do. And so the qualification period is going on. If you want all the details, and I'll link to this as well, it's on Reddit. They posted it in the Smashbox Arena subreddit. So all the details are there, but I do want to make that announcement so that anybody out there who's interested in playing, this will be taking place Sunday, February 12th, and you can get all the details there. We're going to do the entire tournament in a day, and if you follow any type of sports, we're going to try and do depending on how many teams we have, we're going to try and do a format that's, similar to maybe FIFA World Cup, where you have like a group stage and then a knockout stage. And so, it'll just be for fun, help to build the community up. And I've been talking with Jeff, who's one of the developers there, and we've just had a lot of fun planning this. So we're really excited. So if you guys are interested, make sure you check it out, and I will put the links in the show notes as well. But
that sounds great. That sounds awesome. If there's ever a VR game at this stage that is an esports like worthy game, Smashbox is it. 100%.
They were featured at the HTC Vive was the esports summit a couple weeks back. But cool. Even before that, this idea kind of came about, and it honestly. Yeah. So before we had the interview with them, I kind of just threw it out on Reddit. I was just like, would anybody be interested in doing a tournament? Just because I personally was having so much fun with the game, and I was like, I don't mind organizing, and we'll figure it out. And Jeff actually saw it, and so he messaged me, and he's just like, hey, let me know what we need to do to make this happen. And I messaged him back. I was like, hey, we're actually have a scheduled interview with you guys tomorrow night, so we can just chat then. So it was just a funny, like, small world kind of thing where he's like, oh, okay, well, that's, pretty cool. So I'm glad to see that it's happening, this first one. And, there might be some kinks to work out this first time around, but, it's all for fun, and it's all, we're just trying to help build that community, nurture the community, because every time I go into the game, I have a blast with it. So,
it's hard to play for just one round or 10 minutes. Like you hit your menu button and you're like, have I been playing for an hour already?
Yeah, no, I totally get suckered into more and more games. But that was quite a long-winded announcement. But yes, so Smashbox Arena Tournament, February 12th. Sign up is right now, and I will make sure to post a link. But if you want to check it out, it is also in the Smashbox Arena subreddit.
And I would add to that, if you don't know what Smashbox Arena is and you've not heard of it, there's plenty of time. You can go play and get good or get proficient fairly quickly. The game is laid out in it's just very welcoming for people that are new, and it just has that appeal.
Very much so. And without giving too many details away, just in talking with Jeff, there will be, so you won't be able to, make your own teams. We're actually going to, or I won't, but they will be assigning teams based on ranking. So, we're hoping to have the teams somewhat evened out, and we're going to get some teams that have, a very experienced player and very novice players. So,
good balance.
Yeah, whatever the case might be, you'll be playing on a team that should hopefully be somewhat balanced with all the other ones.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Okay, so that was quite the announcement first, but I'm ready to jump into news, man. There's a lot that happened. This past week.
There was something that happened in VR. I can't remember. It popped up on Reddit, and you have to refresh my memory.
Yeah, so I'm glad we did this episode, because we're recording this on Thursday night, and we do now, since we switched to the new format, we do our news/game talk episodes on Tuesdays, and had we done this on Tuesday, we would have totally missed this and had to cover it the following week. But I'm glad we can kind of do a quick refresher on it. No, not a quick refresher, but just a quick reaction to it now. But
reaction and rundown, everything Vive style.
Everything Vive style. And okay, so this news is not Vive related, but it's definitely going to shake up the VR landscape quite a bit. At least, I mean, we'll see what happens. But the main gist, and if you haven't heard of it by now, the main thing that happened is Oculus and Facebook lost that trial to lost the case to Zenimax, and basically Zenimax was awarded $500 million for the, I guess, for the damages and everything that came through. And I'm not as well versed on all the legal stuff, and we're definitely going to have Ronnie kind of go through it once he's back. But I mean, 500 million, and I know that's not all coming out of Oculus's pocket. I know some of that's coming out of Palmer Luckey's. I think it's like 50 million out of Palmer Luckey's, 150 out of Brendan Irab, and I think it's 300 out of Oculus. But I don't want to spread false information. That the big takeaway from this is, though, the fact that, I mean, this is a huge chunk of money. This is a lot, and just looking on Reddit, looking on Reddit, somebody actually posted just a quick example, and I think they said, I haven't done the math, so I'm just paraphrasing here, but if you divide 500 million by the cost of an Oculus Rift and Touch, so I guess $800, that comes out to a little over 800,000 units, which is nowhere near as close what they sold in the first year. And that, of course, that doesn't include, the
games, the marketing and the advertising.
Well, yeah, and the cost of building the product. So, I mean, it's definitely a big blow. Facebook's got a lot of money, so I don't know that how if it'll affect them that much, but I don't know. What are your thoughts, man?
My thoughts are, well, just on the money aspect, Facebook last quarter in revenue pulled in about $8 billion. So when you look at it like that, if tomorrow, this is not going to happen, but tomorrow a judge said, okay, Facebook, Oculus, or as I sometimes call OcuFab, you got to write a check. It's 500 million. You're looking at what, 1/16 of what they pulled in last quarter in revenue. But, and it's a lot of money. 500 million is a lot of money. If you look at the amount of money they paid up front for Oculus, which was 2 and then became 3, okay, another 500 million. That is a lot of money. But when we put it in perspective of trials and corporate trials and litigation and how long it takes a trial to get even from the when you file it stage all the way to being in the courtroom to then judgment, it's, I think on average, I know on average of California, it's 22 to 24 months. Texas, it may be the same. So this is something that's been going on for years. Now we're going to get into the appeals phase. And I looked a lot at the actual, there's a 90-page brief of what the actual jury point by point went by. And a lot of other reporters have talked about this as well. A lot of the major points, was there theft? And even some parts of it said, yes, they did steal, but it didn't have any damages awarded for it. They're like, yeah, you did, but we don't see any damages because of it. Or yes, we acknowledge you did infringe a copyright or infringe a trademark or whatever, but we don't see any money damages from it, which is also interesting because there was a little bit of a pivot that happened with the Zenimax team, and I think they may have realized that. But when we look at the money aspect of it, it's $500 million. There's nobody's going to say that's not a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, and the fact that it could take years, multiple years, for the appeals process to go through and then hammer away, that's where it kind of gets a little bit out there. But then there's even more caveats. Have you seen the information about how they might go to file an injunction against Oculus?
I was just going to mention that. So I mean, I see that still floating around, and to be honest, I just don't see that happening. And as a VR enthusiast, I think that would actually be, I think that would be bad for VR all around. I think, obviously, I'm very much Team Vive, but it's not like I hate Oculus or the Rift. But I just think that competition is good. You're going to have two companies that push each other to put out better and better quality items. And so, if justice has to be served, I'm all for it. But I would just, it's hard for me to believe that an injunction would ever be applied and enforced. There's just too much money there, and I just can't see someone like Mark Zuckerberg allowing that to happen. You know what I mean? It's just,
I see it as the value, maybe as the threat of an injunction, where Zenimax is saying, if we can come to some terms on this, and you guys agree to not take the next 2 years in appeals and come to some kind of agreement, after that, we are both going to come to a terms on, we're not going to spend the next years, and then you get rid of the risk of having any kind of injunction. Like, they could use it, even though there's also articles out there from legal experts saying that because the specific way the ruling was handed down, and because the only things that they found and awarded damages on were the NDAs, those non-disclosure agreements, that they had violated those both directly and indirectly. I think they called it, there's some legal term that they use on that, but that's the only section of it where they really came in and said, not only, we fined for Zenimax, but here's the damages because of those NDAs, which is crazy to think that much money would be associated with violating, a simple non-disclosure agreement. But that's what they decided. And the experts out there have all kind of come back and said, if they had said, you guys did theft and here's the damages, and you broke the copyrights and the software, not patents, but software trademarks and the software IP, and that's theft, is what we give damages for. They said they'd have a much better case at issuing an injunction.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I think it could definitely be used as a bargaining chip. I mean, actually, I think that's probably exactly what they're doing in terms of floating that idea out there. Just the threat of it, I guess, would be enough to maybe bring certain people to the table, or to make certain things look much more agreeable in contrast. That's a great point. That's probably why the idea is still floating around. But for it to ever be enforced, it would just take, I feel like it would just take a lot. And, Mark Zuckerberg came to testify this time around, but I just feel like if anything ever happened, I mean, this is a big investment for him. I just don't see him not fighting tooth and nail to make sure that something like that doesn't happen. Because
and they've got the bankroll to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, there's too much money floating around, legally or even illegally. I'm not going to go into how something might happen. I'm just saying, like, there's just too, people there have way too much pull. I just can't see that happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and not anytime soon. I think this is something that's going to be drug out for a long time. Another thing that was interesting is later, I think today, you saw John Carmack's response.
Yep, I was going to get to that. But yeah, you read through it, so go ahead.
Well, I read through his response, and then he had an update response, and he just described some of his emotions and what he was going through in the courtroom, and when various the experts from Zenimax were explaining, this is code theft, and they copied it line by line, and he just wrote in his response, and he said, and however you feel about John Carmack, I think he's a genius, and I'm a huge fan of what he's done for gaming in general and PC gaming. It doesn't excuse, if you're in the wrong, you're in the wrong, like you said. But he voiced his thoughts of being in the courtroom of wanting to stand up and call the person a liar.
Yeah, I saw that,
and which we all would. You see in the movies all the time. People stand up, you're a liar, and you're in contempt and all that. But he just wanted he wanted to be able to confront them directly, and of course he couldn't because he was had enough restraint not to. But that was his response, and then of course Zenimax came back with their response that said, basically just called out point. It was obviously written by an attorneys or a group of attorneys.
Yeah, it was just a statement that they released. Stating these are the cold hard facts. Expert came in and determined this. So it was very devoid of emotion compared to what John Carmack had posted.
And they're right. Yeah, the cold hard facts are they did find that you took documents, you took this, but then they kind of leave out the second part, which is, they admitted to it, but then when it came time to say how much damages that was worth, a big donut, nothing. There's no damage done. So you did it, but we didn't find anything to it. So it's all about that extra details that they kind of leave out. So it's interesting. The whole thing is interesting. What does it mean for the HTC Vive? What does it mean for VR? I agree 100%. Like, we need as many people in VR, as many people out there talking about, hey, this is great, you should try it, doing demos, hosting, VR game nights, whether they're an Oculus Touch user or an HTC Vive user. It's all people that are going to be exposing new people to VR and more people in multiplayer game rooms and stuff like that. So it would be a bad thing if they were halted from selling their units, or if people decided not to buy. Maybe they hear this news and then they go into a Best Buy and then they're like, I don't know. They change their minds, or it affects sales.
Yeah.
It would be bad.
I'm sure it already is affecting sales on a psychological level. Just with the stuff that came out with Palmer Luckey earlier this year, and with, something like this, and the exclusivity, no matter how you feel about that, I'm not going to comment, just because I think the situation is obviously much more complicated than people give it credit for. But, at the end of the day, I just feel like there's no matter what, there's enough of, I guess, doubt or a black mark on the Oculus name right now that it's not affecting everyone, and it shouldn't affect everyone. But I'm sure there's a significant portion of people who are thinking about getting in, or maybe on the fence of which platform to go with, that this, things like this would probably be the deciding factor for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I agree 100%. And if you
just coming on like brand loyalty, I guess.
Exactly. If you were out there and you bought an Oculus and a Touch, and you're just now hearing about this, just go play Super Hot for like an hour, and you won't even remember it anymore. It's that good of a game. So, and I'm not a huge the exclusive thing. I get it from a business point of view. You spend a lot of money. You want to protect your investment. I understand that side of it. I'm not thrilled about it as a Vive owner, because there's just so many games and content that's walled away that will hopefully someday make it here. But from a business side, I get it. But
so some of the conversations that we've had off the air with developers, about exclusivity, there's a lot of developers out there who actually, that we've spoken to who aren't opposed to. Sorry, that's not the right way to say it. They don't hold it against other developers for taking the money. Because to them, it's just like, you gotta have some type of financial backing to be able to focus on this, almost like a full-time job. And so, if those opportunities are available to you, there's developers out there who aren't like, they're not envious, but it's more so like, if I was in your position, I would have done the same thing type of attitude.
Well, you see it in the independent filmmaker group, like, they're passionate artists and they're driven and they have something that they want to accomplish. And sometimes maybe they get their funding from who knows where, and they're glad to have it. And they may not ask a lot of questions, or they may just be glad. Hey, somebody has faith in what I'm doing. And as a game developer, it's the same thing. Someone has faith in it, but they're a business person. They want to see some kind of business return on it. So I get it. We've got to have a market. Somebody's got to be pumping money into it. And it's just two sides of the coin, whether it's the open, everybody join in, and open source kind of, it reminds us open source, the Linux environment, that whole landscape. And then the whole thought process of, well, we want like Windows, and we want a locked environment and things like that. It's got some interesting parallels, and everybody has their own opinions on it. And you catch me on the right day of the week, and I'll be railing against the idea of exclusivity, and then the next day, But it's the same if you look at Sony. Of course, Sony's going to want to have exclusives for theirs. They've got this installed base that's loyal to them. Of course, they're going to want to have exclusivity for their titles. And it's a console. So the consoles have been doing exclusive launch titles for 20 years.
Yeah, that's a totally different ballgame. Where PlayStation is. So for me, it's tough to like have that comparison between PSVR and Oculus / Vive.
I think they've borrowed their models because this was such a this was like new territory. It's a peripheral, but it's not a game system. It's a computer peripheral, but is it a monitor? Is it all this kind of stuff? They kind of looked out there for business models and have kind of said, if we want to create something, this is how we have to do it. But now with this ruling, it's a lot of money, and the only thing that I hope doesn't happen is other businesses look at what's going down and think, they made it because they spent so much money, because Facebook came in and put down so much money. They let all of Silicon Valley know this is something that's important, and that's how you let everyone in Silicon Valley know this is something that matters. This is something you should care about, is the billions of dollars that are going down to it. They set the value mark, and then now they're putting more money into it. And because there's been this kind of back and forth and even more money that went into it that makes it riskier, I hope it doesn't deter anyone else business-wise that comes in and says, we want to invest in this as well. And I don't think that it will.
No, I don't think that it will, just because you have a lot of other players in there now that, of course, the top dogs right now are HTC and Oculus, but with Microsoft coming out with headsets later this year, with, a lot of other players kind of getting in the game, I think if companies wanted to invest, they're not going to look at this and say like, oh, VR is bad right now. They would say we might steer clear of Facebook and Oculus, until the dust somewhat settles. Which actually brings me to another point, which, as a Vive owner and as a Vive fan, like I'm actually kind of excited about, where for people who, not for people, but for developers who were maybe thinking about doing some type of exclusivity, or maybe were thinking of whatever the case might be, and we're leaning towards Oculus and Facebook, maybe this deterred them from doing that, and they'll release it, to Vive instead, or to both at the same time. You know what I mean? Like to me, it's just
I get what you're saying.
Hopefully, like I said, and this is totally as a selfish wish as a Vive owner, that maybe some of the sway actually helped in our direction.
I see where you're going with this, and it's not something I definitely didn't think about before. They were the safe kind of ploy, like you could, or the safe plan. I can go to Oculus, Facebook. They'll give me money. We'll be exclusive. That's a nice, stable kind of business plan for my game. And now, when you look at it and go, well, that's a little shaky there. Or there's something going on that I may want to spread myself out a little bit. The money that they're offering may not be worth the instability, possibly. Well,
and also the threat of the injunction. I mean, what if you start developing something solely for Oculus? And like I said, I don't think it's going to happen, but just the threat that it could might
that might be enough.
It might be enough to push people to say, like, I don't know if I want to develop something solely for a company which might have an injunction filed against it.
I That's fun. Well, here's what's crazy. So I did get an email from. Oh, I gotta look and see who it came from somebody over at Epic. I was talking to them. Okay, so Dana Cowley. I don't know if you recognize that name.
I don't.
Epic,
But go ahead.
Okay, Dana Cowley, Epic Games. I was talking to them about trying to talk to Tim Sweeney for Epic Games. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, yeah. Let's talk later. Let's talk later because they're getting ready for GDC 2017. Talk about a group of people, a huge, massive group of game developers. I want to hear the news from that, and I want to hear this topic, what their thoughts are at the Game Developers Conference, because that's the group of people out there that are they're the ones that are going to be making the games, and especially those AAA. I almost cringe when I say AAA because we hear that so much. The AAA games, those are the people that's the news I'm excited about, is because those are the ones that are going to be like, yeah, I heard about it. It doesn't really affect our plans. Or B, yeah, we heard about it and we decided we're going to go open with everybody. They offered us a bunch of money and we're going to go a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's it'll be very interesting to eavesdrop on some of those conversations between the developers there.
That'll be cool. But it would be interesting to see how this, if it has any effects, or, this is 2017. People's attention spans are quite short. In a month, everybody may forget about it.
No, very true. I mean, I think we're really only at the beginning of where this goes. And, I feel like more information is going to trickle out. And I'm sorry, more information is going to trickle out, and
we'll get little nuggets that'll keep coming.
Exactly. So like you said, I mean, if Zenimax wants to, or, this could be dragged out for a while, that it would somewhat dominate the headlines for a little bit, at least long enough for it to be a big deal at GDC. And actually, regardless, it's going to be a big deal at GDC because, I'm not a developer, but just thinking in the mind of a developer right now, if I wanted to develop a game, just those questions that we had discussed earlier, like that's what pops up. It's just like, you know what?
Well, and then look at the, they do those surveys. Sorry.
No, you're good.
They do those surveys and they ask developers, like, what are you thinking about? What are your plans? What do you want to develop for? And look at one, say, from 2016 and then see it 2017.
Yes. Yeah. That'll be a big one.
And see if there's been a huge shift and everybody's maybe gone from, I think it was like 2/3 or 3/4 last year. I have to look that up, but I think there was, and there's been quite of a shift, but it would be interesting to see, no less.
Well, I mean, I know I can't recall the exact survey it was, but in something similar to what you're talking about, people or developers were already leaning towards Vive, just ever so slightly. But I'm just curious how this will affect those surveys. And again, I mean, surveys are just surveys, so you never can take it. It's just data is totally manipulated or manipulatable. Yeah. But I mean, I think
show us the games. And
exactly. So I think going down these next, maybe not even 3 months, but I want to say maybe 6 months out, because if there are people already working on games, they're probably pretty far along. But the people who are like halfway through that can still make those decisions about whether they want to focus on exclusivity, whether they want to focus on a single platform. You know what I mean? Like that stuff will manifest itself in, I want to say, at least 6 to 8 months or so.
Did you hear there was the joke on Reddit? Did you hear?
No, go ahead.
The budget for Fallout VR just went up by $100 million, basically. Which would be amazing.
Because ZeniMax owns Bethesda, and so I mean, people were talking about like, okay, they're obviously all in on VR already, so this will be a nice chunk of change for them to invest in some VR games.
Well, and one last thing I'll talk about of all this that I've been reading about with John Carmack, and there's tons of YouTube videos of him from years past, and you can hear him talk about all the things that were the issues with Palmer Luckey's device and the original prototypes and things like that. Go out there and watch them; they're great. You can really hear him address in detail, and he's very smart, so you can hear him talk about it. But one of the really interesting things about the whole thing, the way it came out, was that Zenimax they had no interest. They really didn't have any interest, and I totally get it. It's this, you want us to give you money and go down this road for a technology that once failed before horribly and had predictions of billions of dollars that never materialized, and was a huge, it was not as big of a deal as everybody had hoped because So Zenimax, as a responsible business, didn't want anything really to do with it. They had this genius John Carmack on their staff, but they were just like, yeah, we're not super interested in it. So now they just made possibly $500 million. They'll make millions of dollars on this possibly at some point. They got a little money from it. It'll be interesting to see them kind of change their game around and go, well, we got this infusion of cash from our friends over at Facebook, not willingly. We can afford now to kind of inject some money into it, maybe.
Yeah,
well, everybody gets more boats and jets over at the Zenimax board. But I mean, yeah, they were not interested. Now they're interested. So that's fascinating.
The funny scenario that's popping up in my head right now is after receiving this $500 million from Oculus and Facebook, for Zenimax to approach them and say, "Hey, if you give us a little bit more money, we'll do an exclusive with you guys."
Well, yeah. Thanks for the first payout.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, like I said, we'll see how this shakes out, and I'll be curious to get Ronnie's take on it too, because as an attorney, I'm sure he'll have a very interesting insight into.
I believe he will.
Yeah. So, well, we'll definitely ask him on the next time we do news, but
legal chat,
absolutely. So, let's move on from this, because I think we spent a good amount of time on it. So there are only a couple other news items that came up. Let's move on to the Vive, and let's do some good or feel good news, which is Rec Room adding $5 million in funding. And I don't know if
VC funding. That's amazing. I'm so excited. You talk about developers that are just, I mean, I don't know. It's like they decided we want to make a game of joy and fun and whimsy, and just everybody can play it for free. It's the exact opposite of everything else when it comes to cutthroat business and everything. It's awesome. The good guys win.
It was, and I mean, in our conversation with Nick a while back, it was very clear that they were very much focused on the product, and they delivered on this fantastic product, which they offered for free. They removed all barriers to entry. And now I want to say that they're probably walking away with more money than any of the other people have. Any of the other developers that might have done like an indie title have. You know what I mean? This $5 million payday is a good reward. And I mean, I don't know what their financial situation was before that, but this is definitely going to help grow their operation. And obviously they already have a huge community built around their game, which will only continue to grow. They'll be able to continually offer it for free, which means as more people get Vive, as more people get Oculus, people will be able to jump into it. So this is fantastic news. I'm really excited for them. I shot Nick a message earlier just congratulating him, and I mean, I'm really excited to see what they come out with.
It's a model of publishing for VR. Come out with something that's great. You just spoke to the developers. What's the game? It's a free game. It's you just recently did an episode on it where it is
the Price of Freedom.
Price of Freedom. So come out with something that's fantastic. Come out with something that's engaging, and you want to play, and something that you would normally pay for. That's the number one comment I see on Reddit. People going, Rec Room, I would pay for this. It's that good. Build your brand up of as far as a development studio, so that people know if anytime they ever do anything else, we're the same guys that did Rec Room. Well, of course you're going to automatically, instantly go, I'm interested. Yeah, I want it. I don't even need to know the description. I want it. So they've really built a great model for create a great game, give it away free, everybody likes it, and then from there on, it's all good. And They just imbibe that. It's wonderful. I'm really, really proud of them.
Yeah, no, I couldn't be happier for them. To your point, I mean, I don't know that it's as easy for everyone to, put in however much time and effort they did into that game without having the initial funding. But for them to be able to do that, and for, maybe as almost like what's the word I'm looking for here? A template for developers going in the future who can go this route. I think this is very encouraging, where you build that user base first, and before you know it, like hopefully you'll have funders lining up. And this is off topic in terms of VR, but you look at Snapchat, and I remember Zuckerberg wanted to buy that for $3 billion a couple of years back, and now they're going to IPO for $25 billion. But he wanted to buy them for $3 billion before they had even figured out how to monetize. All they had was the community, and he valued the community at $3 billion, and they valued it at more because they turned him down. So if you build a great product and can have the community that fills in that void there, I mean, people will come running to you, because it's all about audiences these days. If you have if you have a good audience, others will find a way to monetize, and they'll pay you to be able to I don't want to say exploit, because that's not the right word, but to be able to take it to the next level.
And you're going to find a common thread with those developers. They listen to their users, and they listen intensely. Like they put that as the top of the list. We're going to listen to our users and our game, and the people that are playing our game. When they talk back and when they give us feedback, we're going to treat it like gold. And every developer that's like that, or a large portion of them, they succeed in that they build these really loyal communities and fan bases around them. And then the developers, there are some that are out there that maybe stop developing their games, or they don't really listen to feedback from people, or whatever. They're not as driven or loyal fan base. So it definitely shows you, hey, this is how you do it. This is how you're going to get, listen to everybody, build a great product, make it better and better through input, and that's the formula.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's you put it well. I just hope that. I mean, I don't know how to say this, but I guess I just hope that there is a lot more of this in the future, if that makes sense. Like, I hope that other games where you have developers who put in a lot of time, whether the games are paid or not, I just hope that there is some type of reward for them in terms of whether it's VC funding, whether it's maybe even crowdfunding or something like that. But it's just great to see good products being rewarded. And because you want to really make sure those teams stay at work and continue to develop new ideas, new products. And like you said, against Grav, like if they come out with something again in the future, we'll all be waiting to see what the next title is.
Everybody's going to be on board. They don't even really have to convince me.
Exactly. So
they're like Dentist Simulator 2018. You're like, okay, if you say so,
it's coming. It's coming.
We'll play it.
They're gonna. Yeah. VR is going to do some amazing things. I mean, medical side of that is totally. I don't want to say untapped, because I know there are people working on it now. But I mean, dental. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to see where this goes in the next couple of years.
It's Wild West. I mean, everything is open, and that's why I think it's so exciting about it. It's you can just come up with anything, and if it's cool and the experience is amazing or fun, that's all that counts. And I think PC gaming kind of stagnated a little bit in that it had to fit in a very narrow column. It had to either be some type of RPG, or it had to be a first-person shooter, or it had to be a massive online multiplayer thing that you pay so much a month for. Like PC gaming kind of felt a little bit like it kind of got in a rut in, say, the last half decade or decade. And now with VR, I mean, it's a wide open Wild West of where if you can produce something that people like, okay, great.
Yeah, and I mean the wealth of ideas that have come out, the creative ideas. You look at games like Climby, or even something like Smashbox Arena, where one of the most popular games, or at least one of the most talked about games, is a game that is dodgeball in VR.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
it's a simple concept.
It's obviously somewhat of a play on a first person shooter, but it's just such a very creative concept that was nobody thought about before, because the platform and the way to engage with these games and these programs is completely new. And like you said, if you come up with a way to use the Vive that is totally weird but people love it, I mean, hey, you're onto something great.
Okay, here's the Pollyanna twist on everything. Okay, Oculus and Facebook, they have their exclusives, and they have lots of money going into AAA games. Great, wonderful. I can't wait to play those someday when they come over to the Vive. If we had the same setup when the Vive came out and it was all AAA games, they would have drowned out and smothered out all the independent developers, and all the climies out there and Smashboxes would have had to sit at the bottom of that list, 100 or 200 games down, fighting and struggling their way for people to know that they exist. In this environment that we have, because there's so much focus on independent games, and I know a lot of people complain and say, oh, it's all tech demos. Well, it's not all tech demos. Climby's not a tech demo. It's a great game. Onward is not a tech demo. It's an amazing game. Smashbox is so much fun. I haven't had that much fun in a game since I brought home the Nintendo 64 and played Mario until my fingers bled. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm almost glad that they have their exclusives and we can't play them, because guess what? We get to focus on, because those types of games, a developer, a triple A developer, an EA Games, whatever, if you went to their office and said, I got an idea for a game, it's dodgeball, they would have laughed you out of the room. They would have said, no, it has to be explosions. It has to be a Grand Theft Auto. It has to have strippers in it. It has to have machine guns. That's what they would say. And they would never give you a dime to do it. But in VR, because right now with the Vive and the open community that it is, indie developers are the stars right now. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's great. That's the other twist of it. Yes, we've got a lot of independent games, and yes, there is a lot of junk. There's a lot of stuff. If you sort all the games on Steam by user reviews, the first 2 or 3 pages of the games are a lot of amazing stuff. If you go to, say, the last 2 or 3 pages, there's stuff on there.
Yeah, I mean, I can avoid that.
yeah, there's stuff on there that looks like it was made by a 4-year-old alien from Pluto. Like it's weird, but you know what? Okay. You get the fleas with the dog. I like the way that it is. It makes me remember back when PC gaming first started, and you had Wolfenstein, and you had games that maybe didn't look as good, but man, they were fun. And that's what the focus is.
Yeah, no, the current VR landscape, specifically for the Vive, has been very conducive to creative ideas coming out for a new platform like this. So it's been really exciting to see. And not that I don't want AAA games. I think everybody wants AAA games, but I don't want there to be a switch flipped. I think, there'll be a nice transition. And what I'm hoping for is that a lot of these studios, these independent studios or independent developers get the funding they need to really turn it into full games, or get support from other sides. I mean, with Dante and Onward being pulled into their office and being able to work out of there. I mean, I can't imagine the resources that he has right now. So, you just want to hear good stories like that, where these independent creators are, again, being rewarded for the good work that they're doing, and having it take, I know maybe some people will disagree with me, but almost taking like a gradual step to AAA, because I feel like that will incorporate the best ideas. And I remember reading that, somebody was commenting somewhere on Reddit about how, exactly what we're talking about now, where the landscape is allowing for these really cool ideas for, that a major developer or AAA developer will be able to look at like one of the popular games, whether it's climbing or whether it's something really outside of the box, and say, hey, you know what? That's a really cool concept. Let's take some of those mechanics, or let's take some of that and incorporate it into our game. Exactly.
Let's take $15 million and that idea and... no,
because they don't have to copy the idea, but it's more so like
just the concepts, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And every one of those developers, those big name guys, and the big people that do this for a living, they're playing those games. They're playing all these games. Mm-hmm. They're looking at that as like a beta test bed for, okay, they're trying out control schemes. They're trying out what works in VR and what doesn't work in VR. They're trying out all this stuff. And they're looking at the top, the cream of the crop going, all right, we need to make sure we don't make the mistake of thinking that, whatever in VR, that we don't shake the camera and disorient people. And there's a million things that is they just figured out in these first set of games. So the AAA developers, they're watching very closely. And it's kind of like, they don't want to spend their own money to figure these things out. They don't want to come out with a game and then everybody go, oh, didn't you know? Nobody does it like that anymore. And them go, well, it was $30 million. We didn't. Yeah. No one said. So that's totally, I can see why for a lot of them are kind of holding back. They want the market to grow, but they want someone else to figure out, how do people like to move in VR? What do people like to do? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure the locomotion versus teleportation is something that people are definitely watching right now because of the.
Everybody was so paranoid about it. They're like, oh, 100% of everybody is going to get sick and throw up. And then it turns out, well, there are some people that don't like it, but a lot of people are fine with it.
A lot of people do, or they get used to it, or whatever the case. I think a lot of it's just going to be getting used to that type of movement for certain people. So
yeah, your brain figures it out. Just like seasickness for a lot of people, your brain just kind of gets over it and figures it out. And the same thing with any kind of VR motion sickness for a lot of people. Some people not so much, but there are things out there they can do to help and that.
Absolutely. So let's transition now away from news. We'll do some game talk, and I'll be honest and upfront. I actually did not have as much time to dive into games this week, and so I just don't feel like it would be fair for me to chat about some of the ones that I had dabbled in until I have a little bit more of a handle on them and can provide some insight. But I did want to talk to you about Onward because it sounds like you've been playing this at least more than I have. And honestly, like it's just I love the game because it's a lot of fun. I love the realism and the mechanics and everything about it. I just suck, and like when you suck, like it's just tough to like.
It's tough
to wait in the lobby for the 10-minute game to finish. Okay, then we start the next game, and I get shot in the first 30 seconds, and it's just like, oh gosh. But how's your experience been? Because I feel like Ronnie and I have been lacking when it comes to Onward, and it's just one of the biggest games. So I'd love for you to be able to give your insight and experience with the game.
Okay, I've had the exact same experience when I first started playing. I not that I rage quit, but when I first started playing it, at least the first 4 or 5 sessions that I said I'm going to go play this game. Of course, I go into a session and then I'm like, I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I drop my clip on the ground. I think I dropped a smoke grenade. I was not functional at all. And then I said, I had this wherewithal to say, I'll go to the shooting range. There's no one there. I can play around with stuff. I can figure out how to get everything on there. And then I finally watched, there's an intro video that you can watch that kind of talks about everything. And it does basics, but it's like a YouTube video, basically, that tells you this is how you move and this is how you pull things off, weapons on and off. And it is different. I mean, it's definitely different. It's using a lot of the grip buttons on the side of the Vive, which are not super popular, and you don't use them a lot in games.
I actually don't mind them, but continue.
You know what? I didn't really, when I got into Onward, I hadn't really played anything that used them. Every game I played, it was really just the trigger to pick something up, or the grip buttons really, or use the keyboard in the menu when you're inside your, when you're actually just in like your lobby.
Yeah. You know what it was maybe for us? Containment Initiative utilized like the gun mechanics. Yeah. You have to master the grip buttons. And so maybe like just using that made everything else so much easier maybe.
That will help. If you've played a game and you've used the grip buttons a lot and managed to grip the grip buttons without pushing everything else because you're not gripping the whole controller, that's a big deal. Because you use those grip buttons to grab your gun across your chest, your main rifle. And a lot of times you can outfit it with a secondary grip that's down farther, closer towards the muzzle and the end of your rifle. And at any time you can let go and push on your grip and kind of let go and then use your other hand to grab, you can use your radio. Everything is arranged on your body and kind of where you would think. You can look down at any time. You're going to see your rifle across your chest. You're going to see underneath it a syringe, which is used to like heal yourself or heal a teammate. You're going to see if you have a smoke grenade or a grenade on your chest. You can see all of this, which is really, really amazing because you're so used to before seeing your inventory in some type of HUD. And Onward, that was the big thing I had to get used to. You're going to look down and see what you have on you. Your sidearm is lower on your leg. A very kind of, if you're familiar with Arizona Sunshine, same kind of deal. You can look down on your side, grab at your leg level your gun, and pull it up. So those things may or may not be familiar to you, but they take some practice. And I would tell anybody that is new to the game, go to the shooting range first. And if you want to start up there, I think you can even start up a multiplayer shooting range and people can join in. But at least go there and get good at walking around. All your locomotion controls are on your trackpad, actually. So you get good at kind of movement backwards and forwards. Move around in your room scale play space. That's the really cool thing about Onward is if while you're playing, if you have a relatively good sized play space, you don't always have to be using your trackpad for locomotion. You can hide for cover and bend down and look around corners real quick. A lot of times in military, they'll pop up and pop down real fast because you don't want to expose your head or any part of you from much time at all. And you can do that in VR and Onward.
The beauties of room scale, right?
Exactly. And that's the best players. You'll watch them and you can tell they are not using just the trackpad. They're finding a spot. They're using their ears because the audio in it is actually quite amazing.
Yes, it is.
It's incredible. One of the really cool things, and this is one of the things that Onward does better than anybody, when you're close to people, you can just talk to them as if you were talking to anyone else. When they're out of range of being able to talk to them, you have a radio that you can touch on your shoulder and talk to them. And then any of your teammates that are still alive, they'll hear you. But what's even cooler is you can hear the other team when they get close enough. And that's because you've been talking with all your teammates before the round in the lobby, so you kind of get a feel for the people's voice, even if you haven't been on their team for very long.
Yep.
And you're in a round, and then maybe your guys are spread off, or maybe you're the only one left, and all of a sudden you hear these voices, and you hear guys talking around, and they're laughing, they're making jokes. Hey, you seen anybody? No, I haven't seen anybody. And you know that's not your team. And it's those kind of tense moments that really make the game something extremely special.
Yeah, I mean, just what he's done with the game in terms of like just little things like that really just adds such and I overuse this word, I know, but it's such an immersion. You know what I mean? Like it's just the realism of like, okay, if I'm hearing other voices around me, they may not necessarily be friendly voices. They could be anybody. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And and I've talked with him about some of his decisions, and you go in these chat rooms with him, and every decision you think it's a lot of the stuff in the game you think just happened naturally. And I assure you, a lot of this stuff was very well thought out. He's a very focused individual. If you don't know Dante Buckley, he's the main developer behind Onward, and he's a young man who has had a passion for virtual reality and military sim shooters for a long time, and this is his baby, and he puts so much thought and energy into it. But all these little experiences and all these things they're very well thought out, and he's very meticulous on it. In game now, you can see if it's a colder environment, you'll see your breath as you walk around. Which is amazing.
It's such a cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I read an article just kind of detailing his experiences over the last 12 months or so. Whenever he started working on this, and it's just incredible, man. I couldn't be happier for someone who's really just worked hard. I mean, it's just he's put in a lot of work. Like this is, like you said, it's his baby. Like it's his passion. I mean, he's in there every day or as much as he can be with the community, getting feedback and then turning right around and implementing that and being able to put stuff in and really just refining the game. It's just incredible to see how far it's come along. And, I really am excited to see him get the support he so well deserves. And, we'll see where this game goes, but exactly. It'll be a lot of fun.
I talked to him tonight on Discord, and I said, "Hey, is there anything going on that you can talk about with Valve? Because everybody's really excited. They want to know what's going on." Of course, he said, I don't really have a comment at this time," which is it's okay.
It's fair.
I made a joke. I was like, "I heard the coffee at Valve is great. Any comment?" And he laughed. He thought that was funny. But then one other thing that we talked about is I said, what's amazing in the game when you play. Here's the fun thing: when you play during the day, you're playing against people that it's night in Europe or in Russia or China. So it's a different set of people playing. And sometimes people are kind of wacky because it's daytime. When you play at night, everybody in the United States is playing and they're serious and they're focused. But the really cool thing is I've played a lot of matches where one team were all Americans who from all over the United States and we all speak English. And the other team is 100% Russian, and they speak no English. So that level of immersion, when you're playing the game, and maybe you're the last person on your team, and all of a sudden you hear Russian or German or whatever foreign language that you cannot understand running around, it takes it to an even bigger level.
Oh man,
it's amazing.
I cannot wait for VR to hit the Olympics. It'll just be that's actually really cool. I've never had that experience, but in terms of
that's
a lot of fun.
But okay, to get back to the point of Onward and for new people, one of the reasons why the game does have a steep learning curve. If you spend that time in the shooting range and you get good at pulling your weapons out and definitely shooting each weapon, just about, if you pull different guns out, and this is the really amazing thing, it's not just like a regular PC game where you hit the R button or you hit the space button or you hit the right mouse button or whatever button and you reload and it just happens automatically. You have to put some effort into it. You're going to have to eject the clip or pull or hit a button on the trackpad and pull the clip out and throw it on the ground. Then you're going to have to reach in your bag and pull out a fresh clip with ammo in it and put it into your M16 or whatever your rifle is that you're carrying. And then even more, you're going to have to turn the gun over and know where to pull the bolt back to chamber the next round. That is all part of the game. And it's confusing at first, especially if you're not familiar with firearms and how they work. But once you start getting into it and you're not nervous about doing it, handgun, same thing. You have to hit a button to eject the clip. You have to then put a new clip in from your bag and then pull the slide back, depending upon the weapon, to chamber the next round. This is all like the word you use, but it's a perfect word. Adds to the immersion. You can't just spray bullets and spray 100 bullets and spray 100 more. You have to think about it. How many rounds do I have left in my clip of my gun? How many did I fire? Should I reload now?
Yeah.
What are my options? It's all thought. That in normal PC gaming, really, you just didn't really think about that. It wasn't really something you could put into a normal flat PC game, but now you can. Using smoke for cover, grenades, using flashbangs, all of those things kind of play in, and then reviving your teammate. You got to think, well, I usually will talk with people in the lobby like, hey, who's carrying extra syringes? Because it's not really the best idea. You usually want to have a grenade, you want to have a flashbang, you want to have smoke, but it's an option to carry extra syringes. So you're going to be talking to your teammates before the round, before each round you have 4-on-4. You can chat them up. Hey, we're going left, we're going right. We're going to go up the middle. What are we doing? We're going to wait back and plant and wait for them to come to us. So, and that brings me to another point, the camaraderie. And since this is such an early game, let me say that probably the number one really plus to Onward is the people playing it. They are so helpful and so understanding to new people. You really don't, when you get into a game, it's okay to say, listen, I'm new, guys. I don't really know what I'm doing. How do I do this? The one thing I hear the most in matches is people like, how do I pull my map out?
Yep. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, honestly, every time I go in there, it's just, I hear people helping one another out. I've never had a question, that wasn't answered quickly and friendly by someone else. It's just the community is fantastic. And so, it's, of course it's a young community still, relatively young, but Exactly like you're saying. I've had the same exact experience, and I think for a majority of people, I'm sure they can relate.
If you just got a Vive, or if you have a Vive and you're wondering about what to spend your money on, because not everybody's independently wealthy, and they only have $100 or maybe $200 that they're saying, okay, this is all I'm going to spend on Vive games, or I'm going to spend $50 on a Vive game. Onward should be on your list. If you have any interest in first-person shooters or tactical games, or just you want something that really is fun and exciting and tense, and a game that is going to be supported in the future, I think Onward you can't go wrong with that.
I think now more than ever, just because you know the developers very much involved with the game. Now it's going to be getting, obviously no comment in terms of the Valve thing, but it's going to be getting support like this. It's only going to grow. So if you're looking to master a military shooter game right now, like this is probably one of the games on the Vive that if you enter in now, by the time the floodgates open on VR and people are buying Vives left and right, or whatever the case might be, you'll hopefully be at the top of the food chain by then. But it's a great time to get into this game, and like you were saying, it's just a lot of fun.
Well, and don't let everybody forget, especially old PC gamers that played Counter-Strike when it first came out. That was a mod for free, and the developer of that was brought into the wings of Valve. They helped out with the mod. They gave a lot of support, and eventually it became a standard mainstay. And now as Counter-Strike is the thing we know today. I think Onward is the new. It's definitely something Valve has taken attention to. It's the only game that we know of that they have brought into their wings and really wanted to foster and help. And just from knowing who Dante is in his game, I can kind of extrapolate who he is as a person. He's very focused. He's very determined. He's a hardworking guy, and he's really put together something special. So if you're out there and you have a Vive and you're wanting to know, those top games, those top tier, and I'm going to call them double A games. Smashbox.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, these are double A games by every right. Smashbox, and they may not. Okay, so they're not perfectly polished, but they're going to be soon. Smashbox,
but that doesn't take away Onward from the experience for them either.
No, not at all. Excuse me. I've played games, AAA games that I paid $60 for that were horrible, that were lousy, and that either I bought and they're in my Steam library and I've played maybe 10 minutes or a half hour and never touched again, or pre-Steam tons of games where they were hyped up and you paid a bunch of money and they're horrible. They're not fun to play at all. You just wonder yourself, how did this make it past beta testing? So just because it's expensive and a lot of money was spent on it doesn't exactly mean that it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some AAA games out there that I won't name or mention, but I can't justify the price or recommending them when there's great games like Onward, Smashbox, and I know we keep mentioning the same games over and over again, but I mean there's a reason for that, and there's plenty of other games too. I think what stands out with these is the multiplayer aspect and the community building that happens with both of those games. But there's a tremendous amount of other independent titles that are totally worth every penny, and if they're free, even better.
And you know what? And I have another way to look at it too. If say you bought an independent title and it wasn't exactly what you thought, but you played it long enough to where you can't get a refund. Hey, you help support an independent game developer, and maybe he didn't or she didn't hit it out of the park on this one particular game, but you gave them money and you supported them. It's okay. This is an early thing, and we're all supporting an early
investment in the future, right?
It's an investment in the future. So they're not all going to be perfect winners. Some of them are going to be not as great, but there's so many good ones.
Well, even still, sorry, go ahead.
No, there's so many good ones, and all you got to do, really, sort by the reviews, go on Reddit, give a shout out, say, hey, is this game any good? Is this game lousy? And then two, man, Steam's return policy. Talk about, it's the best there is as far as being able to try something out. They give you plenty of time to try it out, and if you don't like it, okay, Go get something else.
Very true. Yeah. I personally, I will confess, I have never returned anything, but I do hear that the return policy is amazing.
I haven't either. I really haven't either. I've played everything enough to where I've said, okay, it's
don't get me wrong. There were definitely some games I wanted to return, but just quickly going back to what you were saying in terms of, if you bought this game, and I think this is kind of the fascinating thing about early access right now is the fact that I bought a game a while back. It just wasn't what I thought, and it was like $8, and I was like, okay, I'll return it. The time came and went, and all of a sudden, it's still in my library. I don't play it. I can't return it anymore. But I jump back in just for the hell of it, and all of a sudden, there's more people in the game now, and it's a little bit more polished. And so, it's just one of those things where I'm not going to get into whether early access is better or worse than coming out with a fully launched title. I think there's definitely benefits and drawbacks to both, but in the place where we're at right now with the current VR landscape, with the current Vive landscape specifically, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, because there's a lot of games that you want to try out, and they might not be where the developer's intending for them to go when you get them. But if you hang on, or even if you miss the deadline to return something, or are on the fence, in a couple months, it could be a game that becomes your favorite, and all of a sudden, I feel like I've seen a couple of games that have this renaissance of popularity, where it's just you should check out the updates in such and such game, because it's improved quite a bit since it first came out.
Well, I agree 100%. There's the early access system. Yeah, sure, it's got its bugs, or it's got people maybe that are taking advantage of it or whatever. But I think that's the rare exception to the rule. These people are passionate about their games. They're putting a lot of time and energy into them, and they're listening to the people that are playing them. But real life can come in the way. So someone said there's going to be an update every month, and 3 or 4 months go by. Well, they probably have a job that is paying them their actual paycheck, that they can pay their house bill and feed their kids and stuff. So yeah, real life can get in the way, but they get back to it, they get back in it. But yeah, I think the program itself is great. And you know what, they have people out there have a wealth of communications tools and the internet to be able to do the research, except for a game that just came out that nobody knows about. Any other game out there, there's Steam reviews, and the Steam review system is very good. There's podcasts like these that will talk about the games and be very honest about what they think about them. There's Reddit.
And YouTube. Don't forget about YouTube as well. Actually, gameplay videos.
Exactly, YouTube. Every game, as soon as it comes out, there's a YouTuber out there making a video on it and showing all the gameplay, talking about stuff. And they're honest. They'll be like, this is ridiculous. This is great. This is amazing. This is lousy. So there's tons of resources out there that you can go, even if it's a $10 game and you want to spend 10 minutes looking on YouTube, going out on Reddit, anybody play this? Is it any good? There's plenty of resources out there to try it out. And then at the end of the day, yes, there's that Steam policy. So I think the whole thing, jump in and try some of these games, because there's just some jewels out there, and be okay to play some stinkers. That's fine. It'll make the gameplay. You know what? For every Richie's Plank experience out there that's freaking amazing, yeah, you're going to play some stuff that may not be that great. Okay, that's fine. It's worth it when you get to, the gems.
Yeah, and so just going back to the early access thing, I think the biggest drawback, and this isn't necessarily a drawback on the program, but maybe just the vibe that happens around, or the general atmosphere around early access, is that I feel like you have a bunch of people who, I shouldn't say it that way. You're going to have some segment of the population who jump into VR or are here and thinking that there are going to be AAA ready, completely polished titles, and not understand that early access titles are works in progress. So you have a lot of people complaining about, tech demos, like you said earlier, or just saying this game is just I wish I had more. But I always take those reviews with a grain of salt, because if somebody's praising a game that's in early access, that has a developer who's, very much involved in working on the title, but they leave a negative review even after giving some praise and saying like, yeah, some of this stuff is cool. But like I said, I take that with a grain of salt just because I'm like, okay, well, he's on to something here. If people are only complaining about the fact that like the experience is short or that it's unrefined or something like that, these are the type of things that the developers are working towards, polishing and getting to a very coherent next level. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And if it's on Steam, and it has 40 reviews or more, and they're real, they're not like fake reviews. Like
I've seen.
If it's got 40 reviews or more, or 50 reviews or more, and it's at positive status and it's early access, it's worth looking at. It really is. I think it doesn't have to have overwhelmingly positive. 98% of people don't have to say that it's positive, but I think if you get in the mid double digits with any game that's kind of new, and you get rows and rows of people, real people giving descriptions on it, and the videos look good, jump in. Or listen to this podcast, and we'll probably talk about it.
Or if we haven't talked about it, definitely reach out and let us know if there's games we should be looking at. So
there you go. Absolutely.
Cool. Damon, this was a lot of fun, man. We got to do this again.
It's a blast. And this is my first podcast. I'm officially... my first episode of a podcast.
Well, you're officially a podcaster now. You can put that on your resume.
Oh, well, awesome. Wonderful.
No, I really appreciate you taking the time. And I mean, for everyone listening, like I said, Damon's just been helping us out, kind of coordinating some of the interviews and just overall direction for the podcast. So Damon, just from me personally, thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I'm a fan of you guys. I'm a fan of the podcast. I'm a fan of the vibe. And I want to say to anybody out there, if you're a developer, if you're involved anyway with HTC, if you're involved anyway in VR, give us a shout out because we want to talk to you. And I'm honored to be on here. I'm thrilled. I love talking about the HTC Vive. I love talking about VR. It's my favorite subject, as many of my family and friends don't want to hear about because I talk about it too much.
Well, I'm glad there's a platform here, or at least a channel that we can. Because I'm the same. I feel like within my network, I usually people are just like, oh, so what's the new thing? How's everything going? Once I pivot to VR, they're like, oh, you talked about that enough already. I'm like, you just don't understand, and unless you have your own headset and can, you know what I mean? So
it's the job of everybody that has a VR headset, and especially all the Vive users out there. It's your job to take it places, to invite people over. We've got to spread the word. So it's part of the agreement. You all bought one early and you've got one.
It's in the terms of service somewhere.
It's in the terms of service. Cannot explain it. You cannot tell people how great it is and they won't believe you. Words cannot express. You actually have to use it. So everybody out there that has one, it's your job to throw a party and invite people over of all ages and say, hey, come here for a second. You got to try this out.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and if you haven't already, I mean, I can't imagine anybody who put on the headset and then thought to themselves, all mine. I'm not going to share with anyone, because as soon as you take it off, you're just like, I want everybody else to experience what I just experienced.
Yeah. As soon as I got mine, I started looking at like, okay, I'm going to need some light poles. I'm going to need some more extension cables and power cables for when I take this to show it at different places. And there's a video game bar, and I talked to the owner. Yeah, he wants me to come to it. And like that's the first thing I thought of. Like and after the first demo of showing it to people and seeing that look on their faces and them in the blue and they're exclaiming, "Oh, this is amazing!" I felt like it was my first time doing it all over again. So
yeah,
that's my call out to everybody listening. If you have a Vive, share it with everyone you know, and it's worth it. But yeah, I'm honored. Thank you so much for having me on. I hope I didn't wax too prophetically and talk too much. But
no, you're fine. No need to apologize. And anybody who has a problem, they can take it up with me. I really do appreciate you coming on, man. It was a lot of fun. So this definitely, hopefully, will not be the last conversation that we have on the air.
Oh, not at all. And all right, I'm happy with what we were able to do and my ability to contribute. Hopefully the comments won't be too bad. No,
I highly doubt it. We got some awesome listeners who I mean, Actually, you know what? I appreciate the listeners who give us critical feedback, because there's a lot of listeners out there who give us constructive criticism, and that is always welcomed, because I mean,
rate,
you know, this
comment,
is
review. That's gold right there. Anytime someone's going to talk good or bad, negative, whatever, it's all gold. Definitely.
Well, like I said, I mean, there's people who listen to the show, and like I said, just give us constructive criticism, which I want to say is very much appreciated, because I've responded to some of them on Reddit, and you know, you're just not sure how the tone comes off on Reddit. I try to be as gracious as I can, but you know, now that I'm here talking, like if you guys are listeners of the show and you've provided some of that constructive feedback in the past, it is very much appreciated, because we take that into consideration. This is a learning experience for everyone involved, you know, myself first and foremost, but yeah, I mean, we're just happy and glad. This is episode number 54. I had no idea we'd get this far, but here we are, Damon. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So for all you guys listening, thank you for tuning in. We are on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube is the best place. We post these episodes on YouTube, and that's where we continue the conversation. So definitely connect with us there. Make sure you rate, subscribe, like, do all that good stuff. Let us know how your Vive experience is going, and we will talk to you again very, very soon. Till then, take care.